Living in kind of a perpetual state of uncertainty or fear is really common for survivors of childhood trauma. It's common for a lot of people for various reasons, but it's especially common for people that have experienced childhood trauma, dysfunction, or a lot of chaos, because that was your life, that was your lived experience. Today, I want to talk about kind of why that is and share with you some thoughts and even a practice to help you learn to connect with your body and learn to feel safe, not only in your body, but in your environment. So if you can relate to any of this, this video is for you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. So I'm doing this video because in the group that I am doing, I talked about in a Q&A, I answered a question about fear, and I just shared a prompt about an affirmation of feeling safe, trusting that you are safe. And this is really hard for people that have experienced any sort of trauma or, again, childhood uncertainty, chronic uncertainty. So first of all, I think it's important to really recognize that reality, that when you grow up in an environment where bad things are happening, and maybe those things are happening around you, maybe they're happening directly to you, or maybe you're just witnessing a lot of things that are happening that are scary. All of that can create this chronic state of being anxious, uncertain, fearful. Now, it may not be that you're necessarily going around and thinking constantly to yourself, oh, I'm afraid, or I'm afraid this is going to happen, I'm afraid that's going to happen, or what if this happens? Now, that could be the case. You might be an incredible worrier. I was like that. I could find anything to worry about at any given moment and obsess about it. So some of us do that without a doubt. And sometimes what we're worried about may be part of our reality. Sometimes what we worry about, oftentimes what we worry about, especially as we get older, is not part of our current reality, but we worry about it anyway. And worry is actually a form of trying to protect ourselves as a way to control something, which is a whole other topic that I'm not going to get into right now. But there's a reason that we worry. It is, in a sense, a coping mechanism. But regardless of how it shows up, we are living in this heightened state of uncertainty. So our nervous system is preparing us for something bad happening. And when we live in this heightened state of awareness, right, like the idea of being hypervigilant, when we live in this heightened state of awareness, it affects how our body chemistry is working, which is why there are so many medical conditions related to ongoing stress. So again, that's another topic that I'm not going to get into a whole lot here, and something that I have talked a little bit about before. So when you recognize that you're going through your life, and developmentally what that means, because your brain is developing, your organs are continuing to develop, your system is regulating. But when you're in this heightened state of kind of arousal, and not sexual, but this heightened state of preparing for something bad to happen, you never get an opportunity to have your nervous system, to have your stress hormones come back down to a state of kind of normalcy, a state of relaxation to help you calm your nervous system. So as you go through your life, you are kind of in this chronic state of heightened awareness. Even if you're not consciously thinking about anything, but your body is always in this prepared state, which is why we can be so easily triggered, or things can have such an impact on us so easily. So as you're on this healing journey, part of that, and hopefully it's somewhat addressed directly, but even if it's not, it's happening anyway. As you're on this healing journey, part of what's happening is you are learning to feel safe. One of the things that I talk a lot about is mindfulness, and I even include it in some of my practices. It's about learning to be present in this current moment. Because for most of you watching, in this current moment, you are safe. Now, yes, something could happen to you an hour from now, or 2 days from now, or a month from now. But in this moment, you're safe. And when you can recognize that most moments, I'm not saying 100%, but most moments in your adult life, for most people watching this, you have in fact been safe. Nothing bad, like really bad, like your previous experiences, nothing like that is happening in your current life on a day-to-day basis. Now, I want to be clear that I'm not at all trying to deny or minimize when bad things do happen, because they absolutely do. It's not about it being all or nothing. It's recognizing that we do have experiences in our current life, for the most part, where we are safe. In the moments when something bad happens, and when I'm talking about something bad happening, I'm talking about something that is objectively harmful. And maybe it's emotionally harmful, maybe it's physically harmful, maybe it's a betrayal. So those things are objectively bad, right? And I'm using the term objectively because unfortunately we can interpret a lot of things as bad things happening. And so that could look like you reach out to somebody for support and they're not available when you reach out. And it's very easy then to interpret that as I reached out for support, they're not available, I feel bad, therefore it's a bad thing that happened. But it's not really. You may feel bad, and it's perfectly natural that you might feel bad because of how you're interpreting it. But you haven't necessarily experienced something bad. So I hope that makes sense. And please know that I'm not minimizing how that can feel, because that can feel absolutely devastating. Truly devastating. It can reinforce that it is not at all safe or okay. Might even be that it's reinforcing that you're not worthy of that support or connection in that moment when that happens. But none of that is true. You're experiencing that because you believe that somebody not being available in that moment means something to you. So recognizing the difference between something objectively bad happening and an interpretation of something bad happening. So something bad objectively happening could be that you've opened your heart and trusted somebody with something that was really vulnerable for you. So maybe you've shared something and maybe even let that person know that, that it's not something that you've shared with other people and that you don't want them to share it with somebody else. And then they share it with somebody else, and you know that, not just you think it, not just you're fearful of it happening, but you know that they did actually, in fact, tell somebody else. So that is something bad happening, right? Because you trusted somebody and they betrayed that trust. That's an objective thing that anybody looking at that unfolding could see that that's happening. That's not just an interpretation. And of course, there's all kinds of other bad things that can happen as well. But these are the kinds of things that, again, most people watching this video are likely to have experienced. So part of the practice of healing and learning to feel safe is being able to, in moments, recognize that you are safe. Like literally in any given moment, whether you're in your car, you're at home by yourself, you're at home with somebody else, you're among several people, you've shared something vulnerably, you've tried something new, literally any type of circumstance, you can take a moment and ask yourself, am I safe? Even if you don't feel safe, so even if you're feeling vulnerable, am I safe? And if the answer is yes, if nothing bad is happening in this moment, the answer is yes. And if the answer is yes, you can take that in, like give yourself a moment to remind yourself, your emotional self, your physical self in your body, I am safe. This is safe. And this again could be being home by yourself, being home with somebody else, being out and among people, being out by yourself, whatever it is, being able to, in that moment, remind yourself that you are safe. So then what happens a couple of hours later or a couple of months later when something objectively bad happens, something hurtful happens? It's natural in those moments, the way that our minds work, right? Reinforcing all those things. It is natural in that moment to go back to a time when you told yourself that you were safe, and then say to yourself when something bad happens, see, you're not really safe. Bad things happen. And while it may be true that right now something bad has happened, or maybe just, in the last hour something bad happened, but that doesn't take away, that doesn't change the truth that 2 months ago, in that moment when you told yourself you were safe, it doesn't mean that you weren't. It also doesn't mean that in the 2 months leading up to this bad thing happening, that you were not in fact safe. Right? So let's say 2 months, what happens is that somebody betrays your trust and tells somebody else something. So in that 2 months, what things happened? What scary things maybe even happened, but you were in fact safe? Being able to really connect with that truth is an important part of the practice in healing. So this example that I'm giving, like I said, is something that a lot of people can really relate to, right? I'm not really talking here about something bad happening like you are assaulted physically or sexually. I'm not talking about, a really catastrophic car accident. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. I could talk about those kinds of things, but while those things absolutely happen all the time to people, for the most part in our adult lives, that isn't something that we continue to experience ongoing, right? Even if in our adult lives we've experienced either one of those things that I just mentioned, it's not generally an ongoing experience, unless, of course, you're in an abusive relationship. And obviously, that's a different scenario. And if you are, then you're truly not safe, ever. If you are in an abusive relationship, you're not safe because you never know when the next time is going to be. And if somebody has abused you, especially more than once, it is likely going to happen again. So you're literally not safe in that situation. So it's important to recognize that. That's not what I'm talking about here for this video. This only works if your life is predominantly safe at this point in your life. So with that example of somebody betraying your trust at some point, it is important to really, when you're reflecting on it and you're feeling like this proves that it's not safe, that you can't trust people, that it's never safe to share anything, it's important to, of course, probably even not in that moment because you're not going to think about it, but whether it's an hour later or 2 days later, it is important to think about, okay, wait a minute, is that the whole truth? Have there been moments, have there been times when I have shared something vulnerably, maybe not with that person, but with somebody else? And as far as I know, it hasn't been shared. Now, that doesn't mean that you feel completely comfortable that it never will be, because that's a separate thing. But has it been the case that you've been able to share something, and as far as you know, it has not been shared somewhere else, that that person kept your confidence? That that person has not given you a concrete reason to believe that they have also betrayed you? So the practice, and you've heard me talk about healing is a practice and a process, right? So part of that practice is being able to connect with the times that you have been safe. And sometimes it is moment by moment. And that's the way that we need to practice it. And then we can look at it in terms of periods of time. We can look at it in terms of people. Like whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship, a friendship, whatever it is, as that builds, can we look at that relationship and say, okay, it's been 2 months or it's been 2 years, and I have been safe within this relationship. Now, it doesn't mean, again, that you maybe haven't felt that you might not be safe, because that can happen from an interpretation. It can happen actually just from a fear or anticipating that something bad might happen with that person. So I'm not talking about, did you ever feel unsafe? I'm asking, have you been unsafe? And being able to see the difference there is a really important part of the practice. As we build any type of relationship, as we build the type of relationship in which we would share something that is vulnerable with somebody, and whether that's just sharing our hearts, opening ourselves up to them in a connected sort of way, or we're sharing something that is deeply personal. Being able to really ask yourself that from as an objective place as possible. Because it's hard to be able to discern sometimes, is this a feeling, a fear that I have? Or do I have concrete evidence that shows me, that objectively shows me that it's not safe? And for a lot of people, you're going to have a lot of experiences that show you that you're not safe. Even in your adult life, there's a good chance that that could be the case. And again, whether it's an abusive relationship or even just a friend who it's very one-sided. But again, separating out the fear or the feeling of being unsafe versus examples of specific things that have made you not safe. So when you are doing this practice, it's helpful to try to be really intentional as you do it. So that might look like giving yourself, it doesn't have to be very long. Depending on what it is, it could literally be 20 seconds, or maybe it's a practice where you sit with your journal, or maybe in meditation and really work on that. But it's about being mindful and thinking through and helping your body connect to moments when you have been safe and moments when you have felt safe. Now, for a lot of people, you may not feel safe for quite a long time when you're on this healing journey. It may take you potentially a couple of years before you're able to really connect with that. But that's part of the reason why when you're on this journey, it is important, even early on, to practice connecting to those moments. And hopefully that's something that the person that you're working with is helping you with, connecting you with those moments when you have been safe, when you have felt supported, when you have felt connected, when you have shared something vulnerably and it didn't go badly, when you were in fact safe with that person, and maybe even experience something positive as a result of sharing vulnerably. So really, the more mindful we can be about that and taking moments to reflect on that and remind ourselves of that, and then being able to remind ourselves, what does that feel like in my body when I feel that sense of relief when I've shared something and I wasn't judged? Now, you might still feel fear, because you might still fear that they'll judge you later. But in that moment, there's this relief that happens, even if it's just a tiny moment in time, where maybe you can exhale, right? When you share something, you're not sure what the response is going to be, but they respond well, and you find that you're able to just kind of breathe, right? That is a moment to reconnect to, because that's a lived experience that you can use to retrain your nervous system. And doing this often, the more you practice it, the more benefit there is. So I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you were able to relate to it. If there's somebody in your life that you think might be able to benefit from this, I would so appreciate you giving it a thumbs up. It really does help other people find it. If it's somebody that you know that you would feel comfortable sharing with, maybe even share this video with them. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Share your experiences, what came up for you, what you noticed, your thoughts, suggestions, comments, any of it. Please share in the comments below. And again, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do so and click the bell for notifications. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.